Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, On Screen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Roerig. Hello, everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we're going to cover a few news stories, a lot of Nintendo news in there, but we're also going to be talking about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, just briefly, no spoilers on that one. Go over what's coming up on the horizon, and then lastly, we are going to talk about, in full spoilers, the Batman. So let's get started with On Beat. On Beat is, of course, our news segment, and we're going to kick things off with Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which has done pretty well. It's got 185 million domestic in its opening weekend. By comparison's sake, No Way Home did 260 million, but that was like huge when that happened. And the Batman did 134 million, which was considered really good. So 185 is really good for a first weekend. It's actually, I believe the budget's actually a bit smaller than a lot of it's big, but it's smaller than a lot of the other Marvel and DC movies. So it's like a really good return. Of that 185 million domestic, it made 36 of those in Thursday previews. So they used to do like Thursdays, like a midnight showing, and now they just have like the whole day basically for these releases. And now they call those the Thursday previews. So 36 million in that one day. I think it made like 90 million in its second day, like on Friday.
Okay, like I have a question though. Why is it a preview when you can go to the theater and watch the whole movie?
Because it officially opens on Friday.
Yeah, I don't get it. Because I watched Endgame on a Thursday, because when I went to buy tickets, it showed Endgame available on Thursday before the day it premiered, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, that's the new thing. That's the Thursday previews, they call them. Movies are still listed as opening on Friday, but then
it doesn't cost any more money to do it.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to go out of your way. I don't know. It's just weird.
It's not exclusive. Like you don't have to get an invitation or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's just a weird thing that's going on right now with movies. They want to release them on Fridays because that's what looks good. It's like the end of the week. It's the start of the weekend. But They want to get like those. I think it's just so they can get all those people that want to see it as soon as possible. They want to get them out of the way so that like more people can go on Friday.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
When it's actually on the weekend. I don't know. For some reason that makes sense to Hollywood. So it's kind of like the Hollywood summer season starts in like May. It's like, but that's not summer.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that is, like I said, 36 million in its Thursday previews. It made 265 million international for a total of 450 million global. This is, again, just its first weekend. So this movie is almost assuredly going to break 1 billion globally. Where like, if you look at like No Way Home, which had a bigger opening, almost did 2 billion. I think Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness will assuredly pass 1 billion global. But that's a pretty good opening.
Yeah, that seems pretty safe.
I think it's the biggest of the year so far. No Way Home is the biggest of the pandemic, like post-pandemic biggest opening.
Right.
But this is, I think, the biggest of the year by a pretty significant margin.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
I think the Batman was the biggest of the year, and that was 134 million. So,
speaking of big numbers, the new trailer for Avatar, The Way of the Water, that got 148.6 million views in the first day it went up.
Are they putting Gargamel on this one?
Yeah.
And Dances with S'mores too?
I mean, that's pretty crazy. People always bet against James Cameron. The refrain is sure, the first one did good, but that was because they were hyping 3D at the time and it looked gorgeous. But, the movie actually didn't have a great plot, and it's been so long since that movie. People don't care anymore. No, people care. It's funny. People always try to bet against James Cameron, and it'll be interesting to see when the movie releases if the trailer is getting like this much interest, because they said that's more than all the recent Star Wars films.
Yeah.
Trailers.
I bet against James Cameron, but it's wishful thinking.
Yeah, it is a wishful thinking.
But you don't want to bet against him because, as the old saying goes, James Cameron doesn't do what James Cameron does for James Cameron. James Cameron does what James Cameron does because he's James Cameron.
Yes.
That's a South Park reference there for anybody who doesn't know. All right. Our next news story, Quantum Leap is going to be getting a sequel series on NBC.
I didn't know about this at all before the podcast, so that's pretty cool news to me. I watched Quantum Leap. I don't think I've watched the whole thing. I've seen episodes of Quantum Leap back in the day when it was airing, and I enjoyed it. It's a fun show with charismatic leads and some interesting plots, and it's got a great premise. So yeah, I'm happy to see they're doing a sequel, as long as they do it correctly. You know, they don't make it like the MacGyver sequel or some shit.
So a few details on this. Raymond Lee, who's going to be appearing in Top Gun Maverick, is going to be playing the lead. He's playing Dr. Ben Song, who is the leaper in this. He's like the equivalent of Samuel Beckett from the original series. Ernie Hudson is going to be playing Herbert Williams. This was a character from the original series finale, but played by a different actor here. And Ernie Hudson's playing him in this version. It's played by somebody else in the original series. He's the head of the program. They say he's a Vietnam veteran, which is weird because this is supposed to be in the future. This is kind of weird.
I don't understand that, but okay.
And then Catelyn Bissett is going to be playing Addison. She's going to be playing the equivalent of the Dean Stockwell character, the one who talks to the Leaper and has Ziggy and gives him information that he needs to successfully complete his leap.
Yes.
So that's kind of what we know about it so far. I think it's interesting that they're doing it as a sequel rather than as a reboot. You know, this is kind of like a new trend, I think, that we've been getting in the past couple of years where, like, instead of just straight rebooting things, that people are like, well, why don't we just make it a sequel? It's kind of like a reboot anyways, but we can draw upon all the lore and stuff that's already been established.
Yeah.
That's kind of something I think that's probably has something to do with Marvel, just the idea of cinematic universes and things where the people have realized, like, oh, well, we can, you know, call upon a bigger fan base if we have all this additional lore, but don't necessarily require it for you to enjoy the show. So that's interesting. I was a big Quantum Leap fan as a kid, so it'd be cool to see if it's any good now. So next up, we're going to cover some trailers that have popped up in the last week. I'm going to start things off with Love, Death, Puss, Robots, Volume 3. Have you watched any of the Love, Death, and Robots stuff?
I haven't, but what I saw in the new trailer looked really intriguing. So I might just go back and watch that stuff.
It's an anthology series, and they're like shorts too. They're not that long. Each episode is like just a short film basically that's using different animation techniques and stuff. Most of it's CG, but I think there's some other stuff in there too. And, you know, because it's like an anthology series and things are done by different groups and stuff, you'll watch one and go like, well, that sucked. And then watch another one and go, that was really good. Netflix also did some weird stuff with, like, I think with the first season where they were like putting the episodes in different orders for different, I don't know why, but they were doing like experimenting with that or something.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's a pretty fun series. I did it when I first got my 4K TV. It was one of the things I checked because, you know, it had an HDR and CG, like looks really clean. So I was like, okay, I'm going to check this out in 4K HDR and see what it looks like. So I watched a few kind of to test it out, but I haven't watched much more besides that. But the trailers always end up looking really good. But that was Love, Death, and Robots. Next up, we got Cobra Kai Season 5. This is said to be a date reveal rather than a trailer or teaser, but it felt like a trailer to me.
It was a trailer. Like, it showed like a good portion of material from Season 5, you know? It was properly hyped. That was more than just a date announcement. But yeah, Cobra Kai is coming September 9th, which is earlier than expected because the last season debuted in December.
Yeah, we're not used to getting a new season within less than a year.
Yeah, exactly. It's welcome news.
Recently, it's been like 2 years or 3 years.
It's welcome news, though. I liked what I saw. I'm excited.
Yeah, everything about it looks pretty cool. Looks like we have Johnny heading down to Mexico to pick up his student.
Johnny with his son.
Yeah, which is, you know, his son's like no longer just got a sourpuss expression on his face the whole time, like the last 2 seasons. So that could be good. I'm excited for that. I always like Cobra Kai. Next up, we have House of the Dragon, which is coming August 21st. We got a new trailer for that.
It looks good. I gotta say, I'm getting excited again for Game of Thrones.
Yeah, we got to see more of like Westeros in this again, like where, I don't know why, but I was thinking this was taking place in Valeria, but like that was the old series that got canceled, but old.
Yeah, that was the old series. This is set after Aegon conquering.
So it's got those kind of old, you hear like House Stark and House, Baratheon. And
this is after Aegon's conquest, but, before the war that ended the Targaryen reign in Westeros.
Robert's Rebellion, yeah.
Yeah, Robert's Rebellion.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Everyone's really skeptical because of the way Game of Thrones ended, but, these are different people. These are different showrunners working on this. So the main thing is, man, you see it again in a trailer and it just reaffirms how ahead HBO is over like everybody else on TV and stuff, as far as like production values and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it's been a while since we've had like a Game of Thrones thing. So you kind of forget. And then you see it again and you're like, yeah, this looks like totally movie quality. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. The production values are crazy high. And that's the HBO thing too. Like with Westworld season 4, again, it looks gorgeous. The production values are super high. That's great. I'm not really that super into Westworld. I don't know. I might watch it just for the sake of
You and I were
watching
both pretty into it. And then the season 3 happened and it was like, ugh.
Season 3, yeah, I thought season 3 had some interesting ideas. I kind of like that they did try to like kind of flip the concept on its head, like reverse the concept. The idea that the humans out in the real world were being controlled by a computer AI, essentially, because like this AI was basically telling everybody, what the best thing to do was at all times. I thought it was kind of an interesting concept, but I don't know. It just didn't land. It got more convoluted.
Yeah. We started seeing Westworld like annoying convolution in like season 2 started happening. Yes. And it was like there's still enough good in season 2 that like we kind of just went like, oh, that's kind of annoying, but oh well. There's all this other cool stuff going on. And season 3 happened and it looked like it was going to be like really amazing. And then the convolution just hit hard, like right out the gate, and it just stayed the whole time. And it was like, okay, this is kind of bullshit. I don't know.
It's the point where I was watching this, and even though like I recognize all the characters, the fact that the Revelations, the one character like Thandie Newton was like part of Dolores or something.
Yeah.
And then like
I don't remember.
It's actually Dolores now. And
I don't think she is. I think it's the other one, the one actress from Thor, from the Thor movie.
Yeah, that's right.
She's the one that's like part of Dolores.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was her. This is how convoluted this stuff is. And like, who's an android and who's not anymore? I don't know. It's convoluted. I can't keep up with it.
Yeah, it's like, and it's not necessarily like good convoluted either.
And I'm like, I really can't remember what the hell's going on.
Well, the thing is, it's like the series has always been convoluted, but convoluted isn't necessarily bad.
No.
And it got bad in season 3, in my opinion. So season 4, like you look at the trailer, it looks great. It gets me kind of hyped for it and stuff. But then I think about season 3 and stuff and I'm like,
yeah, I don't know.
We covered most of these shows like week to week. And then I think we did season 3 in one episode. I don't know. Maybe we won't even cover season 4. I think we have other things to deal with.
There's a lot coming out.
Yeah. But Westworld season 4 comes out on June 26th. It looks great, but I can't be excited.
Yeah, we got a lot of other shows coming up in June. Like there's Umbrella Academy, there's Miss Marvel, there's, The Boys season 3. So June's kind of like a full slate.
Yeah. Also coming in June, but not to TVs, is Crimes of the Future, the latest David Cronenberg movie.
It's nice to see David Cronenberg returning to what he does best, and that's body horror.
Yeah, body horror's back, baby.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you watch this trailer and it's so disturbing. Just from
yeah, it makes you uncomfortable.
Surgery's the new sex was a line in the trailer. It's like, ooh.
It makes you uncomfortable, and if you want to watch 2 hours of being uncomfortable, I think watching this trailer is like a good litmus test for like if you're going to be able to sit through this movie.
Yeah. That's coming in June. And then lastly, we got the new trailer. As you'd mentioned when we were talking about Doctor Strange numbers, Avatar, the Way of Water. This is Avatar 2.
It's Avatar 2. It's going to be the next big movie.
This one's about the waterbender.
And like as big as the first one was, Disney owns this now. So, they're going to market the shit out of it.
Yeah. I hope it fails miserably.
It's not.
I know it won't, but I hope it does.
It's probably going to be like the new number one movie of all time.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. So, everybody who's ready for Dances with Smurfs Part 2, it's coming in December. So, like, biggest trailer ever or whatever. I don't know. I don't care.
Like, kick sand.
Next up, we're going to be talking about Nintendo's financials. So, Nintendo did their financial reports through the end of the fiscal year. The fiscal year ended in March. If you remember, when did they do their last financial report? It was in February, right? It
was yeah.
And that covered through December, but this covers the fiscal year because fiscal years end in March. And there's a few things to go through here. Right now, 107.65 million Switch units have sold in total.
Yes, that is
23 in just this past fiscal year.
Now, that is more than the Wii now officially. So Switch has now officially passed the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Nintendo's best-selling home console if you classify the Switch as a home console. It's still got a ways to go to become Nintendo's best-selling handheld system because
I don't think it's going to make there. I don't think it's going to make it.
Yes, it's sitting pretty at 154 million units.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to quite make it there. The one thing is it did sell 23 million this year, and Nintendo expects to sell 21 million in the next fiscal year. That's right now. This is crazy. The next fiscal year that it's going to end in March. They're expecting 21 million. They would have expected more, but they're still suffering from the chip shortage.
It's still got to beat the Game Boy.
It should easily
is at 180.69. So right now it's Nintendo's third best-selling platform.
It won't take long for them to pass Game Boy. Unless the world ends or something, like we enter the zombie apocalypse next month or something.
So it'll become Nintendo's second best-selling platform by the end of it.
Yeah, and it should pass PS4. It's still behind PS4 and PS2 as well. It should pass PS4 pretty easily. It's probably not going to pass the DS or the PS2, which will make it the third best-selling video game system of all time.
Yes, which is
probably
still
won't
impressive.
Pass those. It's still good, but it probably won't.
Right. Yeah, it probably won't. PS2 is crazy. Sitting there like
I still think
160 million units.
I still think PS2 owes like a good maybe 25% of those sales to the fact that it was like the cheapest Blu-ray or not Blu-ray DVD player.
DVD player at the time. Doesn't matter. Whatever gets you there, gets you there.
Yeah, yeah. And also the fact that everybody I know who had a PS2 except me, oddly enough, had multiple PS2s because they kept failing off.
Yeah, I didn't have multiple PS2s. I bought the one.
You're with me.
That was it. Yes.
The one PS2 club. Like I had to have mine. Like I had to help the drive in and out by the end, but it was.
I did have multiple PlayStation 3s and 360s. Those consoles seem to be less reliable.
Everybody I know who owned a 360 had at least two, and they would so one would red ring, and they'd send it in, and then they'd use their other one, and then they'd get the one back from being sent in the coffin, as it was called, repaired, and then start using that one again because by that time the other one had red ringed. And it was like a constant cycle.
Funny,
constantly trading systems as they were constantly red ringing.
The funny thing is, I never experienced the red ring. What would happen is the disk drive would get stuck and stop working properly. And I couldn't figure out a way to really fix it outside of completely disassembling the thing, which I didn't want to do.
Remember the old PlayStation 1 thing was everybody had to have their original PlayStations at some different angle. Mine was it had to be at a 45-degree angle. That's why I had to have a wedge.
I remember eventually I had to have mine upside down in order for it to continue to read discs.
Yeah, that's just the disk drive. The motor was getting weak and it needed to less strain on it. So you had to put it upside down or vertical or at an angle or fun times. Moving on though, still in the Nintendo financials, they have now sold 235 million games this past fiscal year. That's the best ever for Nintendo.
Yes.
So Nintendo sold more games in this fiscal year than ever before.
So software sales are healthy, and that's the real meat of it, because you can talk about hardware sales
Hardware's
all day.
Just to support the software anyways, you know?
Yeah, like if the hardware sales are through the roof, but like these people are only buying Mario Kart and nothing else, that's bad. That's what you saw with the Wii for the most part, is you saw Wii had high sales, but people were not buying as much software to go with, you know?
Yeah, that's the main thing that tells you how alive the system is. And that brings us to notable game sale numbers. So they updated, you know, their million sellers list and their top 10 and all that stuff. And from that, we picked out some of the notable ones. To me, the one I was most excited about was Metroid Dread, has sold officially 2.9 million.
2.9 million. That's crazy.
Making it the best-selling game in the entire franchise. It's finally passed Metroid Prime. It was really close. It was like 100,000 shy in the last report in February. So it was like we knew. And those numbers that we got in February were from like early December. So we knew it had already passed that. They just didn't have the numbers for it yet.
And it'll pass 3 million easily.
Yeah, probably already has, you know?
Yeah, probably already has, yeah.
Because these numbers are from March.
We won't know till next financial report, which I don't believe is until July, and then I think September, or for like the last two.
Yeah, so we'll know, we'll kind of know updates on that. But right now, this is the important step. This is the one. Any other progress it makes is good, but this is the big one, which is that it is now officially the best-selling game in the franchise. Some other notable game things, Pokemon Arceus, which only came out in January. And again, these numbers only go to March. So this is only like, 2 months of sales, has sold 12.6 million units. And this is also like, not only is this only like a few months, but it's also, there's no holiday season within those few months. And it still did 12.6 million.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's Nintendo like told Bloomberg, like it's the fastest selling Pokemon game to come out. It's only one SKU, which I think people dramatically overstate the effect 2 SKUs have on traditional Pokemon sales. Like, are there people buying 2? Yeah, the majority of people only buy one version and stick with it. There aren't too many people just buying
I think there's a lot of
two
people
versions
that
of the same
buy
game.
I don't think it's the majority, but I think a lot of people do.
The hardcore fans do.
And there's a lot of them.
I think the effect is highly overstated. Pokemon reaches the sales it does because people love that series. It's the way it is. And so people are remarking, oh, there's just one SKU. It's like, no, people like really love Pokemon and they went out and buy it. And this is usually what sales look like when you combine the 2 SKUs for the regular Pokemon games.
Which brings us to Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Our next game on here is now sold 14.6 million. This came out in what, November?
Yes, this came out in November. It's already number 8 on the top 10 Switch bestsellers. Nintendo released a list of the top 10 best-selling games on the Switch as of this quarter, and Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are already number 8 on that list, despite having come out just in November. That's insane.
Yeah, so lots of Pokemon.
In fact, that list has like 3 Pokemon games. It has Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, has Sword and Shield, and it has Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl.
So technically it has 6 Pokemon games.
And it's probably going to have Pokemon Legends as of the next financial report.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is only 2 months of sales.
Yeah. So that list is quickly, and who knows, maybe like next year, fucking Violet and Scarlet will be on that list. So it's quickly being dominated by Pokemon games. Yeah. One more thing, because we have to mention it. Pokemon Sword and Shield is now the second best-selling Pokemon game of all time. I believe it passed Gold and Silver. It still has to pass Red and Blue.
Next up, we have Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which has now sold 45.33 million units, closing in on that 50 million mark. And these numbers are before the new DLC started hitting. I think it might have been even before the new DLC was announced, wasn't it?
Yeah, these numbers announced in February.
Started March. Oh, they were announced in February. Okay, so
February was the direct.
Okay, so it was after it was announced, but yeah, we got all those DLC tracks coming. We got our first wave of it, and we got more coming. And yeah, this is surely going to pass 50 million, maybe go even higher. And we're never going to get Mario Kart 9. We'll get Mario Kart 9. It'll be on the next system, unless we get Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But that's it for our Nintendo financials. Now let's move on to Nintendo had a Nindie Direct, or a Nindie Showcase, meaning their indie games. And we got a few select games here to talk about from that. from the Nindies showcase, the first game that we're going to talk about is probably the game of the show as far as like, you know, what I've seen people reacting to. This is the one everyone's talking about is ElecHead.
Yeah,
which has this kind of like cool Pixar style. It looks almost like Mega Man-esque, like the look of the pixel art.
Yeah, it's very NES style. It looks like it's running on an NES. I'd love to see an NES version, but right now we have it on Switch, and it's a puzzle platformer. You play as like this little robot, this little electric powered robot, and you use your electricity abilities you're going through like this factory and you're trying to like restore power to it. So you're using your electrical powers to charge things like platforms and stuff to move them or to power lights so you can progress.
We didn't see any enemies or anything. It looks like it's just like a puzzle game.
Yeah, it looks like it's focused strictly on the puzzles, but that's fine. That can still be fun.
Yeah, definitely. It has a really cool look, and the puzzles look really fun.
It's an indie game. It's made by a single Japanese developer. I already forgot the guy's name. I'm sorry.
These are all indie games.
Yeah, but a lot of the games though are from teams. So this is like one person. Nama Takahashi is the name of the developer. So it looks cool. Like I said in the chat during the Nindy Direct, I said this is my jam because like this kind of thing really is.
Next up, we have Gunbrella, which was described as noir punk.
Yes, it looked cool. I liked it. Gunbrella is funny. I was like,
Penguin did it first.
Yeah, Penguin did it first. So you use it to shoot people, obviously, or you can also use it to like hook onto zip lines and stuff like that, or to like float in the air.
All things umbrellas you can do with an umbrella.
Yeah, so a lot of
try to realize that.
So a lot of utility to that Gunbrella. And yeah, it's a punk noir. So, you know, you play as, I think they said he was like a lumberjack or something whose friend was murdered and he's trying to get to the bottom of it. It's got like a fun pixel art style. It's not like an 8-bit pixel art style. It's not like ElecHead. It's more detailed, but still like simplistic. I don't know. Looks cool. I'm definitely down for it.
Next up is Silt, which is an underwater game.
Interesting. Yeah.
That's using the limbo kind of graphical look of silhouettes.
It's interesting because like they were showing that and I was thinking, wow, you know, like I've never seen like a 2D game that was, okay, Echo the Dolphin, I guess. It's a 2D game that takes place entirely underwater. Well, like I was thinking like everything's usually like there's a water level, but this is entirely underwater.
This game is going to have a above water level.
Yeah,
it's going to be the worst level in the game.
Yes.
Just like the water levels usually are the worst levels in those games. Next we have Cult of the Lamb.
Cult of the Lamb is a new game. I believe this is being published by Devolver Digital. Yes. And basically you are a lamb and you have to survive in this world. You have to start a cult. You start your own cult and you gain a loyal community of followers. And those followers like help power you up as you go into dungeons and fight monsters and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks neat. I like how it takes like this cute like animal aesthetic and then like marries it to like these dark occult themes. In a way that doesn't like look outwardly like too edgy. Yeah, it looks fun. I don't know.
Our last game we're discussing is Another Crab's Treasure, which is a cute game featuring crabs that's a Souls-like.
Yes, you are a crab and you're fighting other crabs and there's Souls-like combat. There's dodge rolling and blocking from what I've seen. Not too much I can glean from that.
Masochist rejoice.
Yeah, they're kind of promising like it'll be kind of like a masochist experience. Like, I hope not. I hope difficulty isn't just extreme for the sake of it. It's gotta be fun. That's the thing. I think Souls games have kind of an unfair reputation for being difficult when really it's like, yeah, it's difficult, like, because most people like throw themselves like, at the bosses or something over and over again, when what you really need to do is you need to like level up your character. You need to level up your weapons. You need to find better weapons and then go back with a new strategy. And that's usually what works. And what makes Souls game, at least for me, what makes it so addictive is the fact that you always feel like the majority of time, I'm not saying like sometimes it does feel cheap, but the majority of time you feel like you failed because you failed and not just because the game was cheating on you. You know, you failed because you messed up or you didn't do something wrong and you went in there with the wrong strategy. And that's what this needs in order to succeed. If it doesn't like have that feeling, if it's just we made this super hard, deal with it, it's not going to succeed, in my opinion.
All right, so that is the last game from the Nindies showcase. And now we're going to move on to On Tap. what we've been watching, what we've been playing, what's on tap. On Tap is where we talk about stuff we've been watching or playing recently, but not in full spoilers. I'm going to be talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which I've seen twice now, but I'm going to only talk about it a little bit because Will has not seen it and I do not want to spoil for him, nor do I want to spoil for anybody else.
Also, the segment is not called full spoilers.
So I just want to kind of give my base reactions, which is that I really liked it. I've seen a lot of reviews and stuff describing it as messy and stuff like that. I honestly don't think it's that messy. I think a lot of the Marvel movies are pretty messy, and I think this is not that messy, honestly. A lot of the complaints I've seen about this movie, and I don't want to go into them because they're spoilers, I don't really think they hold much water if you actually, think it out. I really enjoyed this movie. I'm a huge fan of Sam Raimi. Maybe that's part of why I really enjoyed it. I think they really did achieve the goal of making this feel like a horror movie. They just said this was going to be Marvel's first horror movie, and it kind of is. I think more than anything, though, it feels like an on-the-run movie. Like the movie starts from the very beginning. It starts with characters on the run, and then it just goes all the way through it. It's like a chase movie, basically. And if you like that, then I think you're really going to dig it. I think if you're overly invested in the idea of the multiverse, like you really just want to have that be the whole thing, you might be a little disappointed. I think, maybe Spider-Man ended up doing more with that, with characters coming from the multiverse and stuff. But there is that in here too. But I think the real focus of the movie is that it's this chase movie. It's this movie about, these characters being chased and the horror elements. That's what really makes this movie strong, in my opinion. And yeah, it's really good. Sam Raimi did it again, delivered a great superhero movie. This is I'd say it was his fifth, because he also did Darkman, which wasn't a comic book movie, but it was still like a superhero type movie. But yeah, that's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Go check it out. It's in theaters now. I'm still going to watch it a few more times, I believe. I have a movie subscription, so it's free for me to do that. That is it for that segment.
Nice. Okay.
Our next segment is On the Horizon. On the Horizon. On the Horizon is, of course, where we talk about what's coming up in the next couple of weeks or so. We're going to start things off with The Time Traveler's Wife, which is coming on Sunday, May 15th to HBO. The most interesting thing about this is that it's being run by Stephen Moffat, who is one of the showrunners on Doctor Who and was the showrunner for Sherlock, the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes series that's long been gone. But that's kind of how we first got introduced to Benedict Cumberbatch, right?
Yeah, that's the first thing I ever seen him in.
It also stars Rose Leslie, who was Ygritte on Game of Thrones, the wildling that Jon Snow fell in love with, and also Kit Harington, who played Jon Snow's real-life wife, is Rose Leslie.
Yes.
And Theo James, who I think he played, was it Hector on Castlevania? He was one of the he did the voice for one of them. It's the guy that got tricked by the vampire sisters.
Oh, that's Hector.
Yeah, that's who it is. That's Theo James.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you don't know, The Time Traveler's Wife was originally, there was a movie that had come out already, and this is a new adaptation as a TV series rather than as a movie. The most interesting thing here is, of course, Stephen Moffat being involved, and he knows how to do time travel because he was one of the showrunners on Doctor Who. So of course he does. Next up, we have Vampire in the Garden. It's a new anime series coming on Monday, May 16th to Netflix. Then on Thursday, May 19th on Peacock, we have Angeline, which is a mini-series starring Emmy Rossum. This is going to be on Peacock on Thursday, May 19th. And it's kind of about one of the first people to do the whole being famous because they're famous kind of thing, like the Kardashians do.
Right.
But I'm hoping, based on what I saw of it in like previews and stuff, I'm hoping that it's got kind of a scathing indictment of that rather than like a glorification.
Like, this is what everybody should do with their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. After that, Vampire the Masquerade Swan Song on Thursday, May 19th is coming to PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PC, and Switch.
Yes.
Do you have interest in this game?
I don't know what it is. I only know about the other one that was coming out. So I don't really know much about this, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I know Vampire the Masquerade. I'm very familiar with that.
Yes.
It was a tabletop RPG, and it's had a few games and stuff. It's interesting that it's hitting Switch.
It's even had its own television show adaptation.
Yeah, Kindred the Embraced.
Yes.
I remember that show. I actually kind of liked it, even though it was cheesy.
It was cheesy. It was interesting. I saw it because my mom loved that show. She had the entire series on VHS that she owned.
Mm. That's the game, the tabletop game for Vampire.
Yeah.
Is has some of the best lore. There was a book of lore they released called the Book of Nod.
Oh, really?
That was it's like a graphic novel almost. And it's amazing. The art's great. The storytelling in it's great. It's really, really good. And it's not even that big. It's just a book of lore. They used to sell that at Hot Topic and stuff. But it was really cool. Next up, we have Chippendale Rescue Rangers, a movie coming on Friday, May 20th to Disney+. We talked about this last week because there was a trailer for it. Will was not too excited for it.
I'm not. I'm sorry. It just doesn't appeal to me.
I think it looks interesting, and I like the people involved in it, but who knows? I mean, this is one of those things you can watch and go wow, this is way better than I anticipated, or you can watch and go, oh, this is abysmal. Who knows? But it's Lonely Island. That's, I think, the thing that's most intriguing to me about it. Next up, Love, Death plus Robots is coming on Friday, May 20th to Netflix, season 3. We talked about this week with the trailer. So yeah, that's when it's coming. We already talked a bit about it though. So Night Sky is coming on Friday, May 20th to Amazon Prime. This is a sci-fi series starring Sissy Spacek and J.K. Simmons, in which they find, it's an older couple, and they find a portal to another planet, an uninhabited planet, somewhere else in the solar system, who knows where. And it's on their property, this portal to this planet, and they're just kind of keeping it for themselves and enjoying it. And I think it's about people maybe finding out about it and, them trying to hide it. I don't know. Interesting premise. Speaking of interesting premise, Apple TV Plus, who has been doing a lot of shows with interesting premises, on Friday, May 20th is releasing a new series called Now and Then. It takes place in 2 different timelines. One is the then, and that's when 6 friends are, it's you're spending time with these 6 friends. And the other is now, in which there's only 5 friends because one of them's dead. So I don't know the tone of this, if this is going to be horror, or if this is going to be kind of more like a drama, like a This Is Us type of thing. But it is coming on Friday, May 20th to Apple TV Plus. The Valet is coming also on Friday, May 20th, but to Netflix. And we talked about this last week when we watched the trailer for it. It's about a valet who's pretending to be in a relationship with a celebrity in order to help that celebrity cover up an affair that she's having with another celebrity who's married.
Yeah,
to help avoid a scandal.
It's a rom-com. Looks goofy and sweet.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Then we have Downton Abbey, A New Era, coming to theaters on May 20th. This is going to be one for my mom and her friends, another older woman. I think mostly. I'm not really interested, but there you go. And then lastly, on Friday, May 20th, also in theaters, is Men. This is the new movie from director Alex Garland of Ex Machina, and it stars Rory Kinnear from Our Flag Means Death. He played both of the brothers that were both admirals that both got killed in that show. It also stars Jessie Buckley, who was in Taboo, which is actually going to be getting another season, but we don't really have too many details about that yet. But anyways, Men is this woman, her husband dies, she goes and moves into this house, and then everybody in this town seems to have the same face of the same man, played by Rory Kinnear, and they're all blaming her for her husband's death or something. They're all saying, what made you push him to kill himself or something? And I don't really know much beyond that, but it's a horror film.
Yeah.
Probably got a heavy social commentary, but it's Alex Garland, who's a really exceptional director, so it could be interesting. And that's it for On the Horizon, and that brings us to our last segment. full spoilers. We're going to be talking about The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves of Cloverfield and Dawn of and War for the Planet of the Apes. It was written by Matt Reeves and Peter Craig. Peter Craig did the Hunger Games sequels, not the first movie, but the sequels. What did you think of The Batman?
I thought it was fantastic. It's like one of my favorite Batman movies since The Dark Knight. I didn't think that was going to be possible, but man, they knocked it out of the park.
They made it even more gritty and more real.
The cast was fantastic. Paul Dano was fantastic. Zoe Kravitz was great. Robert Pattinson was, just... They nailed it. They nailed it.
Yeah. I think Paul Dano, I've been a big fan of for a long time. He's mostly in like indie films. He doesn't do too many big budget movies. This is kind of like, I think his big budget exposure movie. Like people are like seeing who he is.
The biggest movie he's ever been in.
Yeah. Before this, it probably would have been There Will Be Blood, which was still an indie movie, even though it was a big movie,
Yeah, it was still an indie movie. I'm surprised they got him to agree to sign up for a superhero movie, but I think that speaks to the quality of the script too.
He's also going to be doing a graphic novel run, I guess, about the Riddler, about his version of the Riddler.
Yeah, that should be interesting.
Yeah.
I heard about that, but it's great. I love the direction they took with this, where they made it more of a noir detective movie than a full out action movie. There's still the big action set piece at the end of the film where people worry. There's still scenes with Batman punching people. Yeah. It's just like, it's more subdued because most of the movie is about Batman gathering information and trying to piece together what's going on. And it gets more because there's more layers to it, because what the Riddler's doing with his murders is he's also uncovering this vast conspiracy that has been going on in Gotham under everybody's noses, that the city's crime boss and the people who are supposed to be running the city, the cops and the mayor, were involved in.
It's largely the plot of Gotham, but done much better in a much shorter period of time.
Right, yeah.
You're getting kind of all the criminal underbelly of Gotham and all the corruption and the government and the police and everything, which I think they did really well.
Yes.
I have on our show notes here, I have kind of a cast list. So let's just kind of go through the characters.
Yeah.
And the character groupings, I guess.
My idea. That'd be a good thing to do.
Yeah. So let's start with Bruce Wayne / Batman. Robert Pattinson played him, of course.
We're dealing with a young Bruce Wayne in this film. Apparently, by the time this film starts, he's only been Batman for about a year at this point. So he's still new to doing it. And you see a version of Bruce Wayne that is entirely obsessed with just vengeance, and just going out there and beating up criminals because he thinks it's going to save the city or whatever. And he doesn't care about anything else at this point. He treats Alfred throughout the movie pretty harshly.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not the same relationship that you're used to seeing, even though Alfred is very patient. There's one scene where Alfred's telling Bruce he has to appear at a social function when he doesn't want to do that. It's because that's not the mission. It has nothing to do with the mission. And he flat out says that.
Yeah, he doesn't care about anything but being Batman and beating up punks. Yeah. All he cares about. But it's interesting because in a Batman movie, Bruce Wayne is kind of really there's three Bruce Waynes. There's Bruce Wayne, the real Bruce Wayne, who's depressed and dark and pragmatic. There's Bruce Wayne for the people, how he exposes himself to media and stuff as kind of this billionaire playboy, maybe philanthropist, kind of, but he doesn't play too much into that. It's kind of the cover for his other activities. And then there's Batman.
Yes.
And in this movie, we only really get two of the Bruce Waynes because he hasn't really formatted his cover yet, his cover version of Bruce Wayne. He's just Bruce Wayne, a mopey billionaire who just wants to be Batman and Batman.
Yeah. They know several times in the movie that when he shows up as Bruce Wayne, they know nobody really sees him because he's always up in his mansion all the time.
He's reclusive, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's Bruce Wayne, and we talked about his relationship with Alfred already. Let's talk about Selina Kyle.
Yeah.
Catwoman.
Because she's interesting. Well, she's Selina Kyle, she's a thief. That's what she does. But really, she does it for the reasons like she has like a real Robin Hood mentality. She does it because she's not rich. And she sees it as like these people she's stealing from are assholes and they don't really deserve it. And she could do more good with the stuff that she's taking.
Yeah.
That's her point of view.
She has a powerful father who we find out in the movie is Carmine Falcone.
Yeah. Well, we see
we know her mother died
when we meet her, we see her like as a waitress at one of Falcone's clubs, working for the Penguin at one of Falcone's clubs. And she's got this other woman that she's like helping, and taking care of because, she's kind of like in a bind,
Selena's like a caretaker for the disenfranchised,
Yeah.
She's like a champion for the women that are beaten down in Gotham.
Right. Yes. And she's trying to help this woman out. Later, we find out the reason that she's working at that club in the first place is because she is Carmine Falcone's daughter, and that's her way of like staying close to him. Like she's there
not out of affection.
Yeah, not out of affection. No, because she has no love for him. She wants to get back at him.
She blames him for her mother's death. We don't know the full details of that going in, but I think it was it's been a while since I've watched this, but I think it was either implied or implicitly stated that he killed her mom.
Yeah, I don't know like if it was explicitly stated. I can't remember, but yeah, it was definitely implied that he did. He had her mother killed. And,
also, through the run of the movie, this character, this woman that she's trying to help, also ends up becoming a victim of Carmine Falcone.
Yeah.
And that becomes, for the rest of the movie from that point on, of knowing that Selena Kyle's kind of mission is to, kill her own father, basically.
Well, thing is, like Batman, he goes to the Penguin's club, to Falcone's club, actually. Falcone owns the club. He goes there to talk to the Penguin, very forcefully talk to the Penguin. To get information. And that's when Selena catches his eye and he follows her back to her place and then follows her to her next job and kind of uses her situation to kind of take advantage of her and to enlist her to try to get information out of people from the club.
Yeah, with these cool contact lenses that record video.
He tries to take advantage of her because she's concerned about finding out what happened to her friend, and like Bruce just wants that information. It gets to a point like in the club where like one of the guys slips that he might know something. And she goes to chase him and like Batman's like, no, stick to the job. And she's like, no, screw you. I'm going to help my friend.
When she's talking to the guy who lets slip information, that's District Attorney Gil Coulson, played by Peter Sarsgaard, not to be confused with Skarsgård. He is not one of the Swedish brothers. He's an American actor. But yeah, he's playing the role of Attorney Gil Coulson, who is part of the conspiracy. And at that point, almost directly after where we're talking about, gets abducted by the Riddler.
Yeah, because he's the Riddler's next target.
Let's talk about James Gordon.
Yes, James Gordon is great. Jeffrey Wright is James Gordon in this. Jeffrey Wright's a fantastic actor. I know we talked about Westworld earlier, but like one of the bright spots of that show is Jeffrey Wright and his character. I don't think there was anything I seen him in that I didn't enjoy him in. And this is no exception.
Yes, definitely.
He definitely plays a world-weary Commissioner Gordon. Somebody.
Well, he's lieutenant in this. Like, he's not commissioner yet.
Yeah, he's not commissioner yet. It's still early. But he plays like a world-weary lieutenant. He's one of the people trying to do the right thing, but he's surrounded by corruption. But like, he doesn't even realize it at first, like at the beginning, until he starts going deeper into this investigation with Batman, and it starts becoming more and more apparent.
That's what's interesting about him in this movie, I think, is it's the relationship between Batman and Gordon is much more collaborative.
The one criticism I have about it, though, is when you start the movie, like, they've already established this relationship where he trusts Batman. He doesn't know Batman's identity, obviously. He says that. He makes that clear in one scene where you can tell me who you were. Like, they already have this relationship, and it would have been neat to see, like, how that relationship got established, because with the way, like, the rest of the department in the city, like, treat Batman with suspicion and the fact that he's a vigilante and should be locked up, it kind of, like, makes you wonder, how did Batman run across Gordon, and how did Batman manage to gain his trust in the first place? Especially, like, this version of Batman who's so cold and detached and just focused on like vengeance.
Yeah. That's another thing though, is that through this relationship with Jim Gordon, and this appears to be like a new thing in the timeline of this movie from like when this movie starts, that he's working with the police directly. Whereas it seemed like maybe that was kind of like a, hints under the table thing with Jim Gordon before.
The first scene when we see them investigating the first victim, who was like the mayor, was the first victim in the film. When they're investigating the crime scene, Batman shows up with Gordon, and Gordon lets him in. Nobody else around there wants Batman in that crime scene. He's just in there because Gordon insists on it. And you can see like everybody is like nervous about Batman being there. Like there's the detective going over the body and like explaining what he's seeing. And Batman's just standing there like kind of leering. You could see like he's really nervous with Batman standing there. It makes him like so uneasy.
Mm-hmm. The police are not happy that Batman's there. There's obvious tension in the air. They're like kind of lining the hallways.
Nobody wants him there except for Gordon, and Gordon only gets his way because Gordon is lieutenant.
And also because Batman was invited by the Riddler in the form of a letter directly written to him. So this is like considered to be a new dynamic in the movie, even though we don't know if it is or not. Like it's portrayed as a new dynamic that he's like directly on the crime scene.
Yeah, it's a new dynamic. It's very clear that nobody knows how to take it. The Riddler is addressing these letters to Batman, by the way, because the Riddler, through his mania, sees Batman as somewhat of an equal.
Yeah, as like an ally. He thinks they're working together. The Riddler, king of the incels.
Yeah. Played by Paul Dano, who is not named Edward Nygma in this adaptation.
Yeah, his real kind of identity is kind of not that big of a part of the story. He's like an orphan, and it's just kind of the parallel between him being an orphan raised in the orphan system and Bruce being somebody who was orphaned by, an act of violence in the city. There's like a kind of parallel between them there and a difference between them there. And that's kind of more important than his actual identity, outside of being the Riddler.
Right. Well, the Riddler's whole thing, like Edward Nashton is what he's called in the film. His whole deal is he grew up as an orphan in this orphanage where, by all accounts, it was a terrible place to live. Like there were rats. There hinted at abuse occurred at this orphanage. Mm-hmm. And at the time that was happening, Thomas Wayne was promoting this new initiative that was supposed to help the poor people of Gotham. But that program ended up not actually being enacted to help people. Like the money from that program got swindled. Mm-hmm. So what happened is the Riddler, he became an accountant, and what he did was, through his job as an accountant, he uncovered this conspiracy of what was going on. And that kind of set him off to the point where these people are evil and they have to die now. Mm-hmm. He's going to uncover all this conspiracy and make the people behind it suffer at the same time.
Oddly inspired by Batman to do it too.
Yes.
Which is interesting because one of his attempts at a victim is Bruce Wayne, because he doesn't know that Bruce Wayne is the Batman, even though in the trailers and at one point in the movie, they imply that he does know who it is. And then you find out that is in fact not the case. Yeah. It's like a red herring to make you think like, oh shit, there's a really tense scene where Batman is talking to him and he's like, Bruce. You think like, oh shit, he knows exactly who he is, but
no, he's not
just talking about the fact that Bruce is the one that he didn't get,
There's two facets to that, because to him, Thomas Wayne was definitely complicit in what was going on. So Thomas Wayne is definitely guilty, but at this point, Thomas Wayne is dead. He was killed by some random criminal, supposedly. Mm-hmm. Right, supposedly a random criminal, maybe Carmine Falcone. We don't know. So at this point, he's dead, so really, he's not going to let that go. So again, the Riddler decides, okay, I'm going to take it out on his son, Bruce. And he kind of resents Bruce because he knows Bruce Wayne grew up as an orphan as well. But like he says, Bruce Wayne lived in an ivory tower. He got every comfort according to the Riddler.
Yeah.
He got pampered, and the Riddler had to live in this shithole. So there's an intense jealousy there as well for Bruce Wayne, mixed with his anger for what Bruce's father did. So that's what makes Bruce Wayne one of the number one top targets in his mind.
Yeah, which we find out what his father did is more what Carmine Falcone did by kind of, using Thomas Wayne at kind of his worst moment, or not his weakest moment, I should say, when his wife is being investigated by a journalist, and it's going to come out that she's got all these mental health issues and stuff, and he's trying to protect her. And in doing so, he talks to Carmine Falcone, who promises to take care of it in a peaceful way, and instead murders the journalist. And he does that not because like, oh, that's the only way I could protect, but that's now how I can put you under my thumb.
Right,
And so Carmine puts Thomas Wayne under his thumb. His whole mayoral campaign falls apart. He gets murdered. All this stuff happens that sets everything into action. So in Paul Dano's eyes, as you know, the Riddler's eyes, he's completely complicit in this, but really he was just a victim of this that started this, you know? He was like the first victim of this conspiracy, basically.
Yeah. One thing like I do want to say about that though is like it leads to like one of the best moments in the film is where Bruce, like as Bruce Wayne, talks to Carmine Falcone, and he kind of has like his faith in the mission shaken by the idea like Falcone plants into his mind that his father was actually dirty and complicit in having a journalist killed just to suppress information about his mother, you know. That causes like a crisis of conscience with Bruce Wayne, you know, where he goes to the hospital to visit Alfred, not to see how Alfred is doing after Alfred survives the Riddler's attempt to kill Bruce Wayne with a bomb.
I wouldn't say it's not because of that. I'd say it was both, because he genuinely did panic when...
He panicked. Yeah, he did. But when he goes to the hospital to talk to Alfred, he's pissed off because he thinks he was concerned before, but after he talks to Falcone, he goes to visit Alfred, and he's more pissed off that he thinks Alfred lied to him his entire life than anything at that point.
Yeah, definitely. He's concerned, but he's outwardly rageful about what's going on.
Right.
And Alfred kind of sets him straight, kind of implies like, you know, Falcone is manipulating the situation to put him in the favorable light and your father in the poor light in order to use you, similar to how he used your father when your father was in a desperate situation, did not ask for this journalist to be murdered, and was put under his thumb, and his whole world collapsed basically because of this action by Falcone.
Yeah.
And that kind of seemingly puts an end to Bruce's kind of animosity towards Alfred, not just from that scene, but earlier in the movie. Like there's parts where like there's a part where Bruce has to go to a funeral, and Alfred's going to, and they're putting on the cufflinks. It's for the funeral for the mayor, and Alfred's wearing Wayne cufflinks, and Bruce kind of does "You're not my real father. You're not, you know, why you're not a Wayne. Why do you have these cufflinks?" And the reason is because Bruce's father gave those to Alfred, and that's incredibly important to Alfred. But the point is that there's an animosity in their relationship, mostly from Bruce. He's like a teenager rebelling against his father. It's like, "You're not my dad," and is seemingly resolved after that moment.
Yeah, it's seemingly resolved after that moment. It could also like be a combination of the factor that Bruce almost lost Alfred, which would have been like losing another parent. So maybe that kind of like set things in Bruce's mind a little better appreciate Alfred more.
The scene ends with him holding his hand, you know, so it's sweet.
Yeah, it's a sweet scene. And it, like I said, one of the best things about sitting this early in Batman's career is we get to see these relationships, the evolution of these relationships, you know, before they've reached their natural, like, status quo. And then, like, the movie goes, we should talk about the Penguin, because, Colin Farrell, fantastic as the Penguin. Penguin's not, like, a huge force in this movie. There's some stuff with the Penguin. There's a chase sequence involving the Penguin that's really good. I
was going to say that when we were talking about the movie still having action bits, even though it is more of a like noir and stuff. I was going to say, it has like probably the best car chase in any Batman movie.
Yes.
And that's with the Penguin being chased by Batman and the Batmobile. It's all over the trailer. If you watch the trailer for the movie, you'll see clips of it. It's just a really badass chase scene. And it really goes, just the start of it is so amazing when like Batman kind of disappears and Penguin's like looking for where he is. And then you see the lights on the Batmobile come on, the engine rev, and you hear the turbine because he has like a fucking rocket on the back of it or something.
Yes, yeah.
And you hear the turbine kicking in, and it's such an intimidating sound and visual when it happens, and you can just see kind of like the fear across, the Penguin's face as he gets in his car to try to get away.
Yes. Yeah.
It's an amazing scene. Besides that, Penguin actually is somewhat helpful to Bruce with information. I mean, he doesn't want to give it up voluntarily. And
reluctantly.
He plants some bad leads in there too, but like he eventually ends up being a good source for Bruce eventually figuring stuff out.
Like we said, like at this point in the timeline, Penguin is still an underling of Carmine Falcone. He hasn't yet come into his own.
Mm-hmm.
We see the beginning of that, like after the Riddler kills Falcone. Mm-hmm. We see the Penguin standing there looking at the scene and like realizing that it's now his time to rise.
Yeah, when Carmine Falcone was brought into the light, which was the big riddle.
Yeah, the big riddle. Thing. Yeah, yeah.
Batman missed a lot of the clues.
Yeah, yes, he did.
There's a great part where when he's talking to the Riddler and the Riddler says, "Oh, you're not as smart as I thought you were."
Yes. The whole scene where Batman is interrogating the Riddler is great. Paul Dano in that scene is just fantastic.
Structurally, it's so interesting because you get up to the point where Carmine Falcone is killed and the Riddler just kind of turns himself in, and you get this big interrogation scene, and it feels like, okay, it's interesting that they're ending the movie going in this direction. Like, no, there's like still like the whole third act.
There's like the whole third act because like the Riddler has like this entire thing set up that doesn't really require him to be free to enact it.
He's king of the incels, so here come the incels.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what happens is he gives himself up to give the police, in the city some semblance of calm, some semblance of like things are over now so we can let our guard down. And then that's when he unleashes the trap that like Batman doesn't even figure out until it's literally too late. Well, too late to stop the flooding. The bomb's going off in the flooding.
Mm-hmm. Gotham gets flooded and then it gets attacked by Riddler's army of incels
that he cultivated on the internet.
Yeah.
He's become sort of a cult leader.
And this moment, this like tragedy is what the movie leads to with Bruce as Batman deciding that he needs to be more than just vengeance, that he needs to be like a symbol for the city or a symbol of hope and to help people as well, that it's not just about beating people up, it's about saving people. And that comes out of this tragedy. So it's kind of interesting that Batman shaped the Riddler and the Riddler kind of shaped Batman into what he'd end up becoming unintentionally.
Because Batman realizes that pure vengeance and just like beating up criminals isn't really solving the underlying problems. He has to do more. He has to be a savior to the city.
We didn't mention the mayoral candidate. There's a mayoral candidate named Bellariel, who at one point in the movie early on is like, your parents were philanthropists and they helped. And like, as far as I know, you haven't really been doing anything,
When she sees Bruce Wayne, she's trying to get his public support because, she's running for mayor. She's not like a really huge character in this movie. Like she becomes like one of the Riddler's final targets and like at the end of his plot.
I think she's integral. She's not a major player in the plot, right? But I think she's integral in Batman becoming the Batman that we know by the end of the movie. I think she's integral to that, to Batman wanting to become a symbol of hope rather than just a symbol of fear.
It was a fantastic movie. Loved it. Looking forward to the sequel. Looking forward to see what they do. A lot of people are speculating Mr. Freeze. I would love for them to do Mr. Freeze, like an actual serious version of Mr. Freeze on film.
What about Nicolas Cage's Eggman?
Oh God. No, thank you. I'm sorry, Nick. Mr. Freeze, as like we saw him in the animated series, would be great.
Exactly.
Jesus. What about Condiment King?
Condiment King, and isn't there like a balloon guy or something?
No, just do Kite Man.
Kite Man, there you go.
Yeah. I love like Peacemaker constantly referencing Kite Man.
Kite Man's one of the main characters, or not one of the main characters, he's one of the supporting characters in the Harley Quinn animated series.
Yeah.
Really good. So that's it for the Batman. Next week, we are going to be talking about the Pentaveret, or as I like to call it, the Pentaverte, because I'm a fancy pants.
Because you're weird. I don't know.
So stay tuned for that next week. Until then, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. Will is at Voxel Hero. Check out our website, thetotalscreen.com. If you open up one of the container stories stories for any of the episodes of the podcast. You'll find all of our social links and other places you can find the podcast through our direct RSS feed or through our SoundCloud page, anything like that. Leave us a comment if you can, good, bad, or indifferent, anywhere you can, but the best place is probably just on Twitter, just to message us. Again, at Tyson Gifford, at Voxel Hero. Message one of us or both of us, and we'll be able to respond to you and perhaps read your comments on the air in our next episode. You can talk about anything we've talked about in any of our podcasts, or anything that we're going to be talking about, or any questions you want to pose to us, or suggestions you wish to make. Anything you want, basically. Just don't hit us up with ads or something.
Yeah.
But thank you, everybody, for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotaliscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.